Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, thank you for tuning in 25 minutes before 11 o'clock, and we have a book here called Timeless Travels. It is written by our guest, Joseph Rotenberg. He's an attorney, a modern Orthodox. He lived in Jerusalem for several years, visited Israel over 30 times. He's a senior vice president for a financial firm in Paramus, New Jersey, Robin, right? Not too far from where your son lives.
Yeah, Clifton, yes.
Good morning, Joseph. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine. How are you guys?
Good. How's the weather up there today? Is that where you are right now?
It's warm in the 70s, I would say, and overcast. I think we're going to get a resolution of the local humidity pretty soon.
Do you know the stories that come from Jewish heritage are really part of our culture, and a lot of people don't realize it. I mean, even biblical stories, obviously, are from Jewish heritage, right?
No question. That's the source.
Yeah, we went to see Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat last week or something Friday, like that, and I had never seen it before, and I honestly didn't know the story. So we invited a rabbi, and he taught us about it.
Yeah,
he did.
It's a great show. You remember? I don't know the exact production that you saw, but the second act opens with Pharaoh straddling the audience, and on Broadway, where I saw it, there was my wife with the Pharaoh standing up there.
Oh my, how fun. Yeah, we weren't quite as risque.
That was a little too risque.
Did not see that version. Oh my gosh.
But I must say that what impressed me the most is the talent of the average Broadway dancer. I mean, these are physically fit humans.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Amazing athletes.
And I heard in New York there's a Yiddish version of Fiddler on the Roof. Have you seen it?
Correct. I believe that Joel Grey from cabaret fame was behind that. His father, by the name of Mickey Katz, was a comedian and a great musician in the late 40s, early 50s out on the West Coast. And
oh my!
And that's Jennifer Grey's grandpa. So Yiddish is not far from the Katz family original name.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
I never put two and two together with Jennifer Grey and Joel Grey.
I do have a suggestion for all those folks: is to do the musical Hair with like an all Jewish cast. You know.
I don't identify, if you follow my drift, with that exact conception, but language has a way of trapping. And you are expert interviewers, so you brought that out early, and we can move on, right?
There you go. Yeah, I appreciate the compliment. That was a nice way of doing that. All right, so tell me about Timeless Travels. What kind of stories are you telling us in the book?
Well, I think if I just step back and tell you the origins, it was funny. How I came to write the book. I started by writing short stories for a local Jewish periodical, which historically, if you even go back to the 19th century, many of our greatest short story writers, Poe, Hawthorne, and the rest, wrote for periodicals. They would appear monthly or semi-annually. And when they had enough stories written, they had their collection, which has come down to us. Well, it sort of started for me the same way about 5-6 years ago, as I was writing stories about a local youth Little League team. And it just so happened that one of the players' dad was the publisher of this local paper, and I submitted a short story for his consideration, and it led to 30 stories in the next 2 or 3 years being published.
I love that.
And essays. So I had enough of a collection that 2 years ago, actually the book came out in October of last year, November last year. So it's been around a bit, and it's selling well internationally. And as I use Amazon as a way that your local Floridians, most of the people who bought it in Florida, bought it through through Amazon, and that was really the creation. The subject matter is really a reflection of my 68 years of pondering and living an interesting life and traveling to and writing about 18 or 20 different locales. Again, trying to give largely the Jewish American perspective on the events, even going back sometimes to ancient times, but always with a hook that relates to, the subtitle of the book is Tales of Mystery, Intrigue, Humor, and Enchantment.
You have to have humor, right?
Right. So there's no question. So if you want to really describe the human experience, that's one of the ironies that I discovered. I thought I'd be writing about the uniqueness of the Jewish American experience. It ended up that it truly reflects the universality of that experience, and that so many different ethnic groups. I've spoken to people in 15, 20 states, on my book tours, radio tours, and I have to tell you, ironically, each moderator selected a different story out of the 62 stories to discuss.
That's interesting. Is it?
So there is that universal element that touches people.
Does the story resonate differently with the Jewish folks who have always been in Israel as opposed to the American Jewish person? I mean, do you have to write in such a way so you kind of are, because you have been both? So you must know what works with each group, right? Or does it not matter?
I haven't detected that it matters, but my approach is to define, as I say, the common experience, the humor of, let's say, if you're an American, and I have one story called High Gear, Low Gear, No Gear, and the story reflects on a 19-year-old college student who spends a year studying abroad in Jerusalem and decides he wants to learn how to operate and be licensed for a Vespa, a motor scooter. Of course, he doesn't tell his parents that he's doing that. But when he discovers that culturally, when he goes to a school and he asks whether, the average American would ask, how many lessons do you estimate it'll take before I'll get my license? And their response is, nobody passes the first time. So they have built into the system that you're going to take a lot of lessons before you're going to get your license.
Wow, is that based on a real experience?
Everything in my book may I say. I use an alter ego. My name is Joe Rotenberg. My alter ego is usually called Jacob or Jake Rabinowitz, and he has his. And I have people coming to me locally in northern New Jersey, where I live, Teaneck, New Jersey, and they come to me and they'll say, "You're really Jake Rabinowitz, aren't you? That's really you." and I relish those moments when I can claim, "Oh no, that's not me.
That's not you."
Sometimes it is me, and sometimes it isn't.
It is, but isn't. Yeah.
Food seems to be a really good catalyst for bringing different cultures together. The rabbi that we know in town, he has different events going on, and there's always, he invites all of the public to come, and he always serves food that pertains to each particular event. And it really is amazing how people from different faiths come to his event, and that opens up the line of communication.
Well, that's a valid point. I've noticed that in our local, northern New Jersey communities as well. There's no question that keeping we share this planet. Intriguingly, I was interviewed earlier in the year by a African American station, all-night station in Chicago. And for some reason, they assumed that I was like an expert on Jewish black relations, and I had to explain to them that, look, I judge a person as a person. Skin color, this is my personal view, and that I'm not really speaking for the community at large. But yeah, maybe part of growing up on the west side of Manhattan, in the polyglot Upper West Side, during the 50s and the 60s. You rode the subways, you were in an international city. So it was,
yeah, right.
You reached out to people as people.
Absolutely, yeah.
It helped with my accents, though, because I had developed the ability to mimic people trying to speak English without an accent. So that's useful in some of my presentations.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I guess I really love people and traveling experiences. I came back from my first trip to Italy, and I decided that I did not want to do what most people do, which is simply travel, with a high-speed train from Venice to Florence to Rome to Naples, and really not see the countryside. Instead, I booked myself, my wife, and one of our daughters in a small town, if you want to call it the Catskills of Rome, right? 40 miles in the mountains to the east of Rome in Lazio, the province. And I found it the most exciting time. The people were wonderful, but they were more of, I would call them rural Italians, but certainly not, Romans, big city people. And it was a great experience doing day trips, to Rome, Naples, Tivoli, and returning to my mountain retreat. But seeing the different the differences in culture and attitude, and so that's my most recent experience, and I've come away with at least 8 stories for the sequel to my book.
Are your grandchildren old enough to read the book?
The oldest one is going to be 12 in December, okay. So he's old enough, and I would say half of them are. So Nathan and Josh can't because they're just between a year and 2 years. Sure,
yeah. So, but I mean, do the younger folks in your family have the same appreciation for these stories? Maybe not the whole book, but the stories.
I can sum it up in this way. Nathaniel Hawthorne's collection of short stories was called Twice Told Tales. I think that's the subtitle. Mine would be called, according to my kids, Oft-Told Tales.
Oh, okay. So they hear them all the time.
Two oft-told tales. My wife is one of my editors, a wonderful, extremely bright person, brighter than I am, and she's the critic who will tell me this will go, this won't go, and I ended up dedicating the book to her. For allowing me the opportunity to do that. I mean, she's truly, and what we call that an enabler in psychological terms. She permitted me to spend the time on putting the book together and writing and helping me out.
You touch on, you have historical stories in there, and what's sad even today is that there are some people that deny that the Holocaust even happened. I just don't understand how they can be so tunnel visioned about this.
Well, if it's your own grandma, let's put it this way. To me, the Holocaust comes down not to 6 million or whatever number was finally decided upon, plus many, many millions of people. I mean, the Reich that was established in Germany from 1870 to 1945, that government, through the 2 world wars, was responsible for the death of 100 million people, including many Germans. So, I mean, you're talking about an attitude in a society that obviously was not good for the general health of the people either living in that country or out of there. But it comes down to me. My grandmother was a very loyal, mid-50s-old woman who residing in Belgium, and imagine if today you read about a woman, a similar situation, who was kidnapped, dragged 800 miles away from her home, and gassed to death. That's one person.
Yeah.
That would be, on the headlines. Interpol would be frantically searching for the perpetrators.
Right.
And that's one person. Okay, now multiply it times all those grandmas and all those young babies who were murdered. So to me, that number is irrelevant, and whether anybody else believes it or not.
There you go. That's right. That's their problem.
I can't find my grandmother.
Yeah, it is a crazy thing, and it is kind of perplexing, as Robin was expressing. So tell me about your younger days when you were traveling more. Did you hitchhike across Europe? Were you one of those guys that?
No. It's funny. My father was born and raised in Belgium. There's a story which has gotten a lot of mileage in terms of being, adapted in USA Today magazine recently. Called A Letter from Lisbon. So he returned to Europe when I was about 6 years old for the first time after he came to America, and he had adventures. That story recounts his adventures in North Africa. He was actually in Casablanca.
Oh, wow.
When the movie was being made, that was his war story, having gone through Casablanca. But he returned to Europe in 1956 when I was 6 years old, and he brought the whole family with us. So that was my first exposure as a youngster, in France, Switzerland, Belgium. I didn't hitchhike as a teenager. I was, more domesticated during that time. But by about the age of 17 or 18, I started traveling and spent that year abroad in Israel. And a lot of my knowledge about these places is not firsthand. I have to praise my sons and daughters who have traveled extensively, made an effort to travel, much more around the world. So maybe I'm Johann Strauss the first, but they're Johann Strauss the second.
Why do you think we do that? I think that's probably a symptom. I don't know if women do it as much as guys, but and maybe that's just because they're such an easy target and it's a little bit more scary for them. But I mean, I wonder why, because I had my years where I was just kind of wandering around too, and I wonder what that purpose serves. What's purpose is served by that?
I don't know. Maybe we're trying to maybe we've built up some of us have built up certain assumptions about the world, and then you go there and you see sometimes it lives up, it exceeds that, But I think there's a fascination. There was a program with here's a good German accent that I can do. Günter Less was a PBS specialist who did his Journey to Adventure. It was a program that took you out of, you'd be sitting in your local United States, the comfort of your den or whatever, and in front of the TV, and he would take you to all these wonderful places. Anthony Bourdain, may he rest in peace, most recently did it, based on cuisine as well as visiting all those places. We have a fascination about, some of us at least do, about traveling and just learning about other cultures.
And I think that probably never goes away, but we satisfy that need with books or movies or entertainment or some kind of thing. I remember a lady was on the air with us one time, and she had written a book, and she was telling us that she had been poor as a child. And she would come back from a summer vacation, and all of her rich friends were saying where they went. And then she decided to tell them, well, I went to Europe, I went to Asia, I went to the moon. What? You didn't go to the moon? Yes, I did. I went to the library and I read all about those things.
No, that's a truth of our existence.
Yeah.
That books are that methodology. Films, I mean, media is a way to even songs can transport you. The old symphonic poems. To try to create an image. When the birds are tweeting outside my window, near my bird feeders here locally, and then I can, a Beethoven, the pastoral symphony. I can hear the birds tweeting there too.
Yeah.
So we have the richness today in our technology. The digital technology allows us with something like iTunes and its various music programs that you can sign up for.
Spotify.
It's only laziness that keeps a person from taking advantage, because you can go to a public library.
Yeah.
The facilities in Florida, they have great libraries. We have great libraries in New Jersey, and it's there if you just make an effort.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
We were talking about absolutes this morning, and I think one absolute in everybody's lifetime that's most common, and then they stop and they smile, is the baby laughing. because everybody seems to resonate with that.
Though I notice as I get a little bit older and maybe the ticker is not quite as strong as it was, that lifting Josh and Nathan, right, the two toddlers are you begin to feel that, but they giggle. Oh yes, when you when you tickle them, it's the greatest. You know, that's unadorned. They don't yet have the problem of commuting, right? Alarm clocks. Deadlines. They just, they just can laugh wholeheartedly. I'd like to laugh like that occasionally, but I can't get anybody to tickle me.
Joseph, I am a fan of the Jerry Seinfeld thing he does now called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, but I know certainly I know his work, and that observational humor to me is, and the fact that I would say is our most recent codifier of that humor, and a lot of what I write, in essence, is based on observations of people, and that's why the book. I'm not so, obviously you'd like the book to be a commercial success, but as the critical reviews, I have to tell listeners, I'm so pleased.
Yeah, you're 5 stars across the board. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I know it is. I have a dedicated book site, www.timelesstravelsbook.com, and it has a collection of the reviews and places where I speak to local Jewish community centers and synagogues and the like, and to senior groups. And the only thing I object to is if they get up and get a second portion of whatever they're eating. It's usually around lunch. It's the scene out of Be or Not to Be when Mel Brooks is watching, I forget his last name, the actor originally appeared in Animal House, who plays the Polish pilot who's romancing Anne Bancroft. But he goes into a soliloquy as Hamlet, right, to be or not to be, and then somebody in the audience gets up and leaves. Excuse me. So I had that same to be or not to be moment when, following lunch, I was addressing a senior group in New Rochelle, New York, and lo and behold, two older women get up and they're going for for more tuna fish or something. I stood there, to use a good literary word, agape. My mouth sort of dropped, like, you can't get up. You can't get up.
No, that's funny.
Well, I'm telling a story, but guess what? They can, and they did.
Yeah. Well,
that's the
remember that kid.
Those are the moments when reality takes over.
There was a TV show, Kids Say the Darndest Things. I think old people do the darndest things.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, but I don't consider I'm not a youngster anymore. I do get involved in a lot of youth sports with my grandsons, and it's something that I overdid as a parent, but as a grandparent, I have a little more leeway.
That's right. Exactly.
Joseph, I am having a flashback. I think we've spoken to you before. It's good to hear from you again. Thank you.
I believe it was in January, a very cold day, when you reported how cold it was in northern Florida, and I took it at task because you said it was 65 as the high, and I looked at and I opened up by telling you that it's 2 degrees.
I think that's right. Yeah, that sounds so true.
You couldn't have forgotten that line. I think it was the line of January.
Hopefully we'll get to meet you one day. Robin and I are in New York more often lately, so hopefully we'll be able to kind of have some coffee or something, or bagels or whatever. The book is called Timeless Travels. I found that on Amazon. And give us your website again.
It's www.timelesstravels, plural, timelesstravelsbook, BOOK.com.
Okay, very good.
But Amazon is the place. Florida has been good to the book. I think it's the second-ranked state out of the tri-state, after the tri-state area, in terms of interest in it. And Floridians will love the book. It's very entertaining and an easy read, short stories, so that you don't have to commit huge amounts of time. You can
it's
read it collectively.
Fun read. I love the way you write. Joseph Rotenberg, thank you for being on the air with us today. The book.
Well, thanks for having me again, and and cool down gradually, but not too cold. Not too cold.
All right. We'll be right back.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster. Hurricane Florence is hitting North Carolina with 85-mile-an-hour wind and more than a foot of rain already. Federal forecaster Chris Walmsley.
This is only the beginning. Florence is a very slow mover. We'll continue to trek along